Today's podcast, we're going to be talking about how the most recent events with Donald Trump and the violence committed against him and the propaganda behind that has affected the people in the United States, and in fact, around the world. I could talk personally about that as a former United States Army Green Beret, how the propaganda that was pumped into my mind wanted me to commit violent acts on people I had never met and were probably just like you and me. So let's get behind all this baloney and learn how to get along together. Let's get it. Good day. My name is David Fusco. And in this show, I'm going to talk about business, finance, and how to survive and thrive in this crazy environment that we're living in today. Welcome to my show. Good day. Today is July 18, 2024. It's only a few days after the attempted assassination of President Trump. I'm not going to get into any of the details about that, but let me just give you a quick overview. Right now, I'm a certified public accountant in New York, but I'm a former United States Army Special Forces soldier. I was in the 10th Special Forces Group as a light weapons specialist and a communication specialist. And, so I learned certain things from that time and experience as to what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. But the part I really want to talk about is how the population is split into two major groups, and it's almost down the middle. At least so we're told it's almost down the middle. I don't know if that's in fact the correct answer or not. But we've been going through, and population's a lot more wise as to how things are now, and we can see how the media comes almost out in lockstep. And actually, I think they use those words. And you can turn on any channel and you can almost listen to the exact same talking points with the exact same inflection by all of the major news channels. Now, to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, there's a thing called Neurolinguistic programming. And what that is by using repetition of something and in different formats, you can get people to think and believe in a certain way. I can speak directly to that, and any military person can speak pretty much to that, whether they know that that's what's happened to them or not. So when you're in the military, obviously, as directly as it sounds, your main function is to defeat an enemy. And in defeating an enemy means taking him out of operation, whether you kill him or injure him. So what happens is you go in as a recruit in basic training, and now you start learning how to things like march, to run. And while you're doing those things, you're using what's called a cadence. You have marching cadences and running cadences, and you're singing. You're not singing about raindrops and roses. You're singing about violent things. You're singing about, effectively brainwashing yourself into wanting to die and do damage and hurt other people. And it's done repetitively. And depending on when you've been in the military, there are different enemies at that time. And I was in the late 70s and the early 80s, active duty. And during that time frame, the main enemy were the Russians. I guess we're going full circle and we're going back to the Russians again, or at least that's what it seems like the media wants us to do. And just to give you an idea of how pervasive that thing is, I'll give you a story. So I was out of the military for quite some time. Now it's 1992, 93, and I'm an accountant, and I'm doing tax returns. And now the Soviet Union had collapsed, and a lot of the Eastern Bloc peoples were coming over here. The man's doing his tax returns for a new client to me, and he's from Russia. So I'm sitting in there and talking to him. I look at his name. I see the Russian-looking name. I hear him speaking with a Russian accent. And as he's talking, violent thought goes through my head. I'm going to say it just like it was. It was felt like it came right from here. And it made no sense because there was nothing wrong with the man. But the thought came through, kill him. I was like, what the hell was that? And, obviously I did not. Otherwise, I'd be probably still in prison. But it's like, why do these things happen to us? And actually, prior even to the military, growing up, I was born in 1959, so I got the cartoons that were of that time. And if you look at those cartoons from that time frame, very militaristic. They were, the toys were all militaristic. On top of the fact that my father and uncles and other relatives were all military. My father was World War II and Korean War veteran. So, you're getting surrounded by this stuff, and it indoctrinates you to think a certain way. And, it's no surprise that, when people get brainwashed in a certain mindset, that they're willing to do something. Even when you think it might be an evil thing, maybe that shooter thought he was doing the right thing. But that's because probably of some kind of brainwashing, whether it was done directly or indirectly. This is my opinion. And, I'm just speaking also from my own experiences that I've noticed. And it took me a long time to learn not to have a negative thought towards Russian people. So even after that event, and nothing happened, I would go on, and throughout my working life, I've had my own business. You get resumes of people coming in, and you look at them, and I see the Russian-looking name, and I'm like immediately turned off by it. And I'm actually now 65, and it probably wasn't until about I was 55 years old, maybe a little less, about 10 years ago, when there was a time frame where I was super shorthanded, and it was tax season, and I was under a lot of pressure, and I needed more help. So one of the girls in my office had a friend who was an accountant graduate. She actually went to school with her, and she recommended her. And I look at the name, I go, "She's Russian?" She goes, "Well, yeah." I go, I don't know. And, she's a really good girl. She's a good worker. So, finally, I relented, and I said, "All right, fine. Let me just give it a shot." I have no choice, actually, is why I gave it a shot, to be honest. So she comes in the office, and she's working. Time's going on. I'm watching. During tax season, I'm busy, so I didn't have the opportunity to pay that much attention. But as she's working, I'm watching, people chat, and that's okay. You got to get up and clear your mind. But I'd always notice other office members would get up and they'd stand near her desk. She would not get up from her desk to chat, and she would continue working while they were talking, look up, recognizing that they're talking there, and just continue doing her job. And then I'm listening to her, and she's talking about, her brother, her mother, getting barbecues, going to dinners, going to restaurants, going to movies, and I'm listening. And then it was like the strangest thing. Here I am, a 50-odd-year-old man with all this experiences in life, and I go, "Wow, you mean she's just like me?" And as strange as that sounds, that kind of realization after all that decades and decades of indoctrination into my mind, it was kind of like shocking a little bit that I had to finally at that age realize that most people in the world, I don't care where they're from, are just like you. They want to go home. They want to play with their kids. They want to go to a movie. They want to eat something nice. Most people just want to have a nice life. And, if you go back and you look at during the World War II, what did they do? If you could look at the very old cartoons with Bugs Bunny as an example, you could look at the signs, and they depict the enemy as, certain evil ways. And that's because they want you to be brainwashed into that, because to hurt another human being is not a normal thing. And in order to do that, you have to dehumanize the people. I would get into the slang language of the different countries that we fought, but I'm not going to use those words because there's really no need. Well, we all know them, or if you don't, you can look them up yourself. And whether it was the Germans, the Japanese, the Vietnamese, the Koreans, the Afghans, the Iraqis, there's always a name, a slang name. You don't want to use them and identify them as anything that might be normally recognized. You want to dehumanize. Now, going back to our current media and what they've been doing over the last probably all our lifetimes, but let's say at least more noticeably over the last decade or so, is that they keep the same repetition, and that's a way to immediately say that there's some kind of propaganda going on. Why do you need that constant repetition? Why believe your own eyes? Why believe your own ears when you can look at something and see something and make a decision about what you just seen, yet the media or a person who has, or groups that have a different agenda that want to mold things in a certain way will address that same exact event in a different way. I've just one that I remember was, and I don't know what news channel it was, but they came out when the attempted assassination happened to Trump saying, he fell when he heard a loud noise. No, he was shot at, and he actually was hit. And then there's people saying, oh, it was fake or whatever. You know what? Look at yourself, use your own mind. The other problem is that we haven't, going back to the biases, we all have a bias or a prejudice, whatever word you want to use, in everything. And the problem is like when I was looking at would look at a resume of a Russian person, my immediate bias came into that decision-making process. And it took, like I said, decades to realize that that was a fault. And I corrected that fault. So when people are like looking at an event of a person that they don't like, their immediate bias is going to be against that person. And it's very sad. What we really need to do is to use our own mind, use our own hearts, we use our own guidance system that we have in our mind, and try to look past that and realize that everybody, for the most part, just wants the same thing. They want to be left alone. Most people are willing to help people. Most people just want to relax, go home, play with their kids, go somewhere with their family, or just sit alone watching TV and not be involved in any of the craziness of the world going on. And I'm watching what's going on, and I have 2 nephews right now that are current active duty military, and I'm concerned. If your country gets invaded, absolutely, you got to stand up and do what you have to do to defend it. But to be put out there in a situation where there is no real agenda as to why we're there, just because the propaganda built us up to such an energy level, is something that you've got to consider. And so I'm hoping that you get a little value out of this talk. It's obviously not about finance. I am a CPA, like I said, and I try to focus on how the events of today are going to affect us financially, and I will. I'll talk more about them than I already have. But I just want you to use your mind to not allow yourself to be manipulated and propagandized, and look and reflect at what may have been put into your mind that really doesn't belong there. So appreciate it. Give me a like if you can, and subscribe. Thank you very much.